today we're going to be talking to another success story. This one has quite the saga. I was like, this is Jamie Cantrell, everyone. She's got a really interesting story. I was reading through a lot of your posts on our Facebook group, and it seems like you were broken up from your ex for quite a long time before you got him back.
Yeah, 10 months. Yep.
Yeah, that's like almost a year, basically.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us back to the beginning? Like, I know it's probably hard to kind of go back to revisit a breakup, but can you kind of maybe explain what the breakup, like what happened to make that occur?
Sure. So we had been together for almost 4 years, and of course we're older, in our 50s, and he seemed to be a very kind of a dismissive avoidant. So I learned a lot of those terms through your program. I was first introduced to that. And he kind of started pulling some things that I felt were very inappropriate with a coworker. And
Uh-oh.
I just wasn't okay with it. And so, I called him out on it. He just dismissed it, kind of did a lot of gaslighting. So I said, hey, I need a break for a couple of weeks to think about this and process it. After those 2 weeks, I contacted him and said, hey, here's what I want for my life. We've been together 4 years. Is this relationship progressing? Is it going anywhere? Because if it is, let's work on this. If not, hey, let me know now and I'll move on. And so I always considered myself, as you would call, a very ungettable girl. And so I kind of laid that ultimatum, if you will, out there. And he kind of said, yeah, no, I don't see us going anywhere. I don't want to ever get married, and you need to go find somebody else, and we're just too much alike, and we're not enough alike. And he just kind of talked in circles and absolutely caught me off guard. I was not prepared for that. So I did the breaking up, but then I was the one that came back and said, hey, I really want this to work. We have so much invested. And he acted like he didn't want it to work. So I did a little bit of the crazy stuff like you talk about that I'm not very proud of, because I'm a woman that knows better. I did a little bit of the calling and the texting, and finally I just said, okay, I stumbled upon your program, actually, is what happened after I blocked him and then unblocked him, because we do those crazy things when we're hurt. And I stumbled upon your program, and I just delved into it, just 100%, did a 30-day no contact. Then I reached out, and then he would go 3 weeks and not reach out, and then we'd reach out again. So we just kind of back and forth reached out a little bit to each other over the next several months. And he still was just stubborn and did not want to really let me, compromise with me or give me any hope that there was a progression to this relationship. And, I probably, in your words from your program, I probably pushed the envelope a little bit. But at my age and after 4 years, if we're not going somewhere, let me know so I can move on. I finally, I think through your program, remembered that ungettable girl that I've always been. And I kind of lost her for just a little bit. And I think that's what's great about your program is even very high quality, high value women can lose ourselves in a relationship when, especially powerful women, because we like to be in control. And when we feel like we're out of control, that kind of throws us a little bit. So I got that girl back, and I just implemented everything in your program. And I've got some really great stories of how that worked so well. And then, about Thanksgiving, just a couple of weeks ago, he messaged and said, I love you. I want you back. I'm reconsidering marriage. I'll marry you. And, but by that point, Chris, I had honestly grown and changed so much. That really wasn't what I wanted anymore. And that was something that I learned in your program that I didn't think would happen to me. So success story, not a success story, depends on how you view it. I view it as a huge success.
Oh yeah, it's a huge success for sure. Yeah. I mean, so what's interesting to me, just like listening to the broad macro strokes of everything, is you mentioned like originally the precipice of the original breakup was you wanting a deeper commitment. like a marriage
Right.
type situation. And he
Right.
seemed to resist that. Had he
Yes.
been married before and had like a poor experience? Was that some of
Yes.
his
Yes,
resistance?
he has. Yes.
No, I don't know if this is like overstepping or anything, but how long had it been since, because I'm assuming, they divorced and what have you. How long had it been since he had been removed from that?
Oh gosh, 20 years. Yeah. So long
Okay.
enough to get over that breakup.
I see. So
So,
it's almost like a wound, like it just like he carries the bad memories of that relationship with him. But what's fascinating is you had him do a complete heel turn, where by the end he wants it's the ultimate irony. By the end, he's asking you to basically marry him, and you're just like, I don't know, which is kind of what our program is trying to
yes.
get people to believe. But for me, the most important thing is how did you get to that mentality?
Okay. So, oh gosh, so many things. I just read your program. I listened to every YouTube video before school, after school, on the way to work, on the way home,
Oh
you
my
name
God.
it. On my lunch break, I poured into your program so much, because like I said, I've always, I think inside of every woman and man, there's a high quality woman or a high quality man in there. They just don't always show up as that person in that particular season. And so my focus was I really wanted to get me back. And I remember you saying the only way they come back is when you truly move on. And you can't fake moving on. You truly have to move on. You truly
It's
have
like
to not
listening to a carbon copy version of I can't tell you how often I've been up there in that YouTube room saying that exact thing and thinking, I wonder if people are actually listening to this. And finally, someone has.
Yes. Yes. So that really clicked with me that,
I can
I'm
still
sorry.
hear you. No, you're good.
Okay, good.
It is what it is.
My phone is kind of being weird right here. So can you
Yeah,
still see me?
I can't see you,
Okay.
but I can hear you, and hearing you is more important than seeing you right now.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna see if I can find you back here again. I don't know what happened. Somebody called me and my phone is just
Oh, that's all
absolutely
good.
crazy.
You're just you're an ungettable girl. You got lots of
I
attention.
yes. Okay. So there you are. So anyway, what happened is I knew that I had to 100% move on. I had to get over him somehow. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, this is the way to get him back. But then I knew I couldn't have that in the back of my mind, or I
Yeah,
wasn't
it's a
going to get him back.
paradox. Yep.
Yeah, so that was tough. Of course, learning all about the ungettable girl, and I just really dove into that. I actually started telling other women about it, and I teach high school girls, so I would talk to them about things that I learned from your podcast. They said, "Hey, I've joined this
That's
program.
crazy.
It's really great. Let me share with you some relationship stuff," and that helped me because now I was teaching them, but I was also teaching myself again. The one
They
thing
should
I
be
think
right.
that
They should be teaching my book in high
they
school,
should.
right? They should.
Yeah, I do. I teach it. It's okay. The one thing that worked for me, and a lot of people may criticize this because I know I had put on a Facebook post, and some people said, if I don't think that's right what you're doing. But I dated. I jumped right back into the dating scene immediately for a couple of reasons. Number one, I thought, I'm 53. I don't have time to waste. And I am a goal-oriented person. And if I want a loving, committed relationship, I'm going to go after it. But I'm very, very picky. So it had to be the right guy. So I knew I was going to have a long search. The other thing was I did not want to really jump back into dating. I would cry on the way to a date. I would cry on the way home from the date. My heart was just still broken, but I did it like a job. I forced myself to go out and meet new people. And what I found was it did several things. Number one, it allowed me to practice being ungettable, to practice being flirty yet confident, to practice getting back to that place that I knew I should be. The second thing it did was I met some really great guys. And at first I thought, I'm never going to fall in love again. Like, he's it. He's my life. And it took a lot of dates, but about the 10th one, I met a guy that I'm like, hey, I think I kind of like him. And so that helped a lot to help me move on. So I started realizing, even if it doesn't work out with this guy, I found him, I can find more.
Yeah.
So the thing that worked the best, and this is where it may be a little controversial, but I think you should put it in your program because it worked brilliantly. All of the guys that I met online wanted my phone number. And I told them that I didn't feel comfortable giving my number out just yet, but I would love to be Facebook or Instagram friends with them, and we could stalk each other a little bit. They were all for that, and that worked perfectly because then I could make sure I wasn't getting catfish.
That's like quite literally ungettable.
Yes, and what happened was they all started liking all my Facebook posts, and all my Facebook posts and Instagram posts are public. So I knew my ex would be watching, and you talk about the law of scarcity, worked brilliantly. So now I've got 30, 40 high quality men because I didn't entertain men that I didn't feel weren't high quality. They were liking all my posts. They were saying comments like, you're absolutely gorgeous. You're so beautiful. I love your style. And it's these men from all over, but many of them were somewhat close within a 100-mile radius. So my ex is seeing all this. Now, I didn't know he was seeing it. I had no clue he was even watching, but later I found out that he most certainly was. And the guys that I was talking to on these sites and being friends with on Facebook, now they see all these other guys liking my stuff, so they think I'm ungettable. So now the law of scarcity just kind of compounded. And guys I didn't even know before came out of the woodwork. Other exes came back from years ago. It was the craziest thing because I really worked my Facebook and Instagram like you talked about. I went skydiving. I
can't believe you went skydiving. You're crazy. That's I would never do skydiving. I know I say like do these crazy things, but I'm the classic case of like, yeah, I do skydiving, but I would never do skydiving. You know?
Yeah. So I forced myself to just do all these really crazy, cool things that I never thought I could do. And I posted about all of it on social media. I did shout outs to clothing stores of me wearing a new dress. And so then it didn't look like
you did post a really interesting picture. You did post it, like the picture that caught me most was you posted this picture like when you were talking about your success story, and it's of you like in front of this red Mustang. Or is that a Mustang or just really nice red car? And I was just like, wow, that's a pretty awesome post.
Yeah. And that was another guy that I met just online, just actually on Facebook. He just saw the cool things that I would just like other guys' things on Facebook. I just put myself out there. I put myself open to dating, even though I wasn't ready. I think if you wait until you're ready with anything, with, doing your business. If you waited until you had all your ducks in a row, you probably would never have done it because things aren't always going to be prime time to do something. So I just jumped into dating and I wasn't ready. And, but I just said, okay, I'm going to practice being ungettable in this moment and with this guy and just see where things go. And that is what helped me to really move on.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's also interesting about what you said like, well, it might be controversial that I was going on these dating websites. I've learned a lot this past year just by interviewing success stories. Like, to me, I'm very interested in what actually works. You know, I've done all the research on the psychology, so I could sit here and like say, like, we can talk about attachment styles. We can actually talk about how rebound relationships, scientists or psychologists actually think rebound relationships is one of the best ways to quote unquote get over an ex, which is kind of what you experienced a little bit. But what I found as a consistent pattern among people who are getting their exes back is they do go on other dates when they're not ready. So I think there is something to that. But it seems to me like
I think men are competitive creatures, and they they can't stand it when they think you're seeing somebody else. But if they think you're seeing a better man, a higher quality man, a richer
Yep.
man with a Ferrari,
Yep.
then it really drives them crazy. And so that's what worked really well for me. And I would encourage it because you not only increase that law of scarcity, you get to practice being a high quality woman, but you get to meet some really fascinating people. And some of them, we're now great friends. Some of them were going through a really hard breakup. And they said, and we both kind of said, hey, I'm not ready to jump into anything serious just yet. I'm going through this breakup. And they would say, hey, me too. So I became battle buddies with a guy that I was talking to on a dating site, and we become best friends.
That's great. Yeah. Sometimes you forge
Yeah.
those connections through hardship. Uh, yeah. You just seem like you really get the mentality. Like you put a lot of work into getting to that place emotionally where you just were willing to be like, okay, whatever. If I don't get him back, I don't get him back. And do you think just forcing yourself to go on dates when you didn't like you mentioned you're crying in the car, which is horrible. You're crying going back from the date, which again is horrible. Do you think like I guess at what point did that kind of stop and it became more about the empowerment side of things as opposed to like you're just hung up on your ex?
Oh gosh. I'm a quick bounce backer girl, so I bounce back fairly quickly. However, I would say, let's see, we broke up right around Valentine's Day, February. So March, April, May, June. I would say it was about 4 or 5 months that I actually said, okay, I'm doing this for me. And the thing about going on dating sites and forcing myself to do things I wasn't ready for and go work out. I worked out like crazy, hit the gym every day, and really working on myself was I had to say, I might love him, but I love me more. And I will do whatever it takes to show self-love to myself. And if that means putting myself out there and letting myself be vulnerable for another man to love me, then that's what I'm going to do. I will guard my heart in the process. But I firmly believe, I'm a Christian, so if that offends anybody, I apologize. But I firmly believe that God has an amazing, awesome, wonderful future and plan for all of us. And I knew my guy was out there. And I just said, okay, I'm going to go find him. And, I told my ex and I told other guys since then, hey, I want a man that's going to show up with intentional, purposeful behavior in my life. And if that's you, great. I would love to move forward with you. But if it's not, that's okay too. And maybe you're not my guy. Maybe there's a better guy out there for me. And maybe there's a better girl out there for you. Best of luck. And I'll tell you what, that sentence right there works like you would not believe how well it works. All of a sudden, men are, so much more interested when they've been ghosting you or orbiting you. All of a sudden, they're so much more interested now.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say why I think they're more interested, and that's because you almost like position yourself as someone who has confidence and who has self-value. Whereas I think a lot of women, at least when they come into our orbit, they don't really have confidence and they don't have self-value because they become completely codependent on the relationship. So half of the battle we struggle with is trying to teach them healthy habits. Like this is how secure attachments are supposed to be. This is like what it's supposed to look like. And what's really interesting to me is before like towards the beginning of this interview, you mentioned that you always kind of had considered yourself as an ungettable girl. And then you get into this relationship and you feel like you kind of lost a little bit of that. And then, the breakup happens and you still don't think you're there. That's actually consistent with what we're seeing across the chain with attachment styles, and how someone who's a completely secure attachment style can get into a relationship with an avoidant and all of a sudden become extremely anxious. So it's important. I think that the big issue, and I'm really eager to get your thoughts on this, but I think the big issue that most people have is they have this misconception that the work stops once you get the guy,
Right.
that, and they get a little bit maybe complacent, and all of a sudden they start giving into their anxious behaviors. Do you feel like that's sort of what happened to you a little bit in your breakup?
Absolutely, absolutely. I have been through way worse heartaches than this one, and I've always bounced back. So, absolutely, you get, if you're in a relationship with somebody that's an avoidant or toxic or narcissist or whatever, they do kind of wear you down little by little, and you don't really recognizing that it's happening, and you don't realize that you're losing yourself. And then you get fearful and you get anxious, and especially for alpha females like me, I want to control everything. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think depending on what relationship you're in, it can trigger some anxious behavior. And the key is to stop and say, okay, this anxious behavior is not healthy. And that's what your program did. It allowed me to see my behavior from an outside perspective and say, oh my gosh, I am acting that way and I need to stop. So in all the dating relationships in the last 10 months, I got to practice being more securely attached. I got to practice saying, hey, he hasn't texted me for 5 hours. That's okay. He's probably busy. No big deal. Sometimes I do that too. And I didn't let it trigger me. And so the more I practiced that secure attachment style, the more great high quality men were just beating down my door, because you come at it from a standpoint of, I may want you, but I certainly don't need you. And I want to treat you well, but I also want to be treated well also. And so, yeah, absolutely. That we've got to get ourselves back to that secure attachment place that you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, also it seems to me like you're really, really good with regards to getting to those, like, I feel like maybe you have experienced bad breakups and have come through the other end and felt like, I'm okay. And you can maybe
Yeah.
draw from that. Whereas you're a little bit older than our average customer, right? Our average customer is like kind of, like in their mid 20s or so. And a lot of them have maybe only, like, this is their first big breakup to where they don't really have a little bit of experience to draw from. Whereas I feel like one of your advantages is that you knew deep down that even though it hurt, it was going to be okay. What do you think I could say to someone who's struggling in a breakup to get them to connect and sort of buy in? Because I do find I have a lot of trouble getting people to buy in when they're in the depths of pain, So what do you think would work?
Oh, I think a lot of it is just time, and that's really hard to tell somebody when they're hurting. But yes, I have been through, like we talked earlier, I've written a book of all of my breakups and hardships that I've had, and I feel like I've lived 3 to 4 lifetimes of really, really horrific experiences. And so I knew that this breakup was not going to break me. It hurt. I was sad, but I knew I loved myself enough that I would get over it. And people that haven't been there, I think it just takes time to get them through that. But to tell somebody, hey, this too shall pass. It's going to take some time, but you're going to be okay. It's hard for them to wrap their mind around that. So the best thing you can do is tell them that, but then also give them strategies like you do. And again, one of the biggest strategies is move on. Date other people. I don't care if you're ready. Now I know a lot of people will say that's horrible, horrible advice. But coming from a woman who has been in that place many times, I'll tell you what, it feels really good to have a high quality man, or any man for that matter, to say, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're sexy, you're amazing, your ex was an idiot. Even if you don't like that guy, we all need validation when we're in that place of insecurity, and when we feel like we're not loved and we're not worthy. We all want that. And so in a way, somebody had mentioned on your Facebook to one of my posts, they said, it seems like maybe you're just using these guys to get validated. Yeah, maybe. I'm not even gonna try to deny that. I was putting myself out there, and it was not intentionally to feel validated, but that was a byproduct that happened. I put myself out there because I knew I needed to move on. And the only way for me to move on was to show myself, this guy is not on a pedestal. There are other guys that hold a much higher place than him. And I need to go prove to myself there are other high quality men out there. And this guy that I think I love so much is not my whole world. So that was my purpose. In the process, they did make me feel absolutely amazing. And so I think that's a hard sell, to be able to tell people, hey, just jump back in the saddle again, jump into the ring of fire. I think that's a hard sell because you still have to guard your heart in that process. But I think it's practicing being the ungettable girl in that dating scene. You don't want to not date for a year or 2 years. I think it makes it even harder because then you're so scared to jump back in.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's really, I think really the heart of the thing you're talking about here is momentum, but like both positive and negatively. Like, let's say you have someone who is too afraid to jump back in and they go years without dating. Well, they have all sorts of negative momentum, and then they have this wall built up and they don't let anyone in. Whereas you took the opposite approach, which is, okay, I'm going to practice on other men. And ironically, that's what created the momentum that potentially may have, I mean, it just kind of feeds off itself, right? You know, you have this guy liking your post, this guy liking your post, and then you have your ex seeing this, and they have this guy seeing all this. And, you know, it just kind of feeds off of itself, and it creates opportunity. And I think that's something that a lot of people, when they go through breakups, don't really feel like they have, because their whole world is wrapped around this one guy. And right. The weird part about this is you technically got your ex back, but you actually, I think, transcended just that, because you had a position where you could choose whether you wanted to take him back or what you like wanted to move on to all of these other opportunities. Right. And I think that's, to me, that's the ultimate power of your approach. I could see why it is a hard sell for someone, but if you want my opinion, just from everything I've seen over the past decade of just talking to people and asking them what's really working, the one consistent trend we have seen is getting to this place where you've let go and also dating other people. It seems that is like the most consistent thing you can do to have success long-term. And I think you hit, you've been probably the most vocal person I've talked to success story wise about going out and dating other people. But I can see why, when you had so much success, because it's not just that you got your ex back. I mean, look at all these men just foaming at the mouths on social media. You know, that's kind of a nice.
It's actually been very, very fun. And those guys will say, they'll make comments like, wow, I don't know that I can compete with all of these other guys. You have a string of guys that are hitting you up on social media. Are you talking to any of them? Mm-hmm. How can I compete with that? Or, you know, and you can just smile and say, hey, you know, may the best man win. Put forth your best effort.
Well, it's
but yeah, I think that women need to learn that, you know, we have one life to live, and you want the best people in your corner and the best mate in your life. Mm-hmm. And we need to not put these men that are pulling these shenanigans. If somebody doesn't want me, or if they're on the fence about me after 4 years, I certainly don't want to try to convince them that I should be in their life. Why would I want that guy? I want a guy that, instead of being on the fence about me, would jump fences for me. And that's the guy I want. And so I just kind of set it up almost really like an interview. I made a spreadsheet, and every guy had an asset and a liability column. If they didn't check off enough assets, we're gone.
That's tough. That is tough. So so now I'm definitely going to jump into that. So an asset and liability column. What were some examples of some of the assets and some of the liabilities some of these men would have, without naming too many names? I mean, we don't want too many men to be upset, but
No, no. And the assets and liabilities are going to be different for different people. But for mine, we had to have the same political standpoint. We had
Okay.
to, he had to be a Christian and the same denomination or similar denomination to what I was, those core values.
So those are
Okay.
like non-negotiables for you. Like they have to
Non-negotiable.
be. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be a nightmare to be in a relationship with someone who's a Democrat and someone who's a Republican. I'm imagining that would
Right.
create a
Right.
lot of friction.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with
and-
religion. I would assume it. If you're,
yeah.
you get the Christian and the Muslim together. That's not going to be too
Yeah.
much of I might pay to watch that movie, but I would not pay to exist in that relationship.
Right. And, always before, when I was in a relationship, it was, oh, I like him. He likes me. We have this chemistry. Let's be in a relationship. But after this breakup, I realized, okay, chemistry is not enough. Short-term connection is not enough. I need this long-term connection. So I am not going to go for any guy that doesn't meet these core assets. I'm a hard worker. I go out and I hustle, and they had to hustle as hard as me or harder than me. Financial stability was a big one for me. And these are going to be different for every person. I didn't want somebody with young children. I didn't want to raise anybody else's kids. I've been there, done that. So all those assets are going to look a little different. The liabilities, if they started orbiting or ghosting, maybe we were talking and maybe we went out on a few dates and, there was really connection and there was chemistry, but then they kind of started getting a little, just orbiting or ghosting. I had no problems at this point just shooting them a text and saying, hey, I can tell you're pulling away a little bit. You're being a little bit distant. No worries. Maybe we should just date other people. I want somebody that's going to show up with purpose in my life. And if that's you, great. Feel free to clarify. But if it's not, best of luck to you. And I'll tell you what, they got a little offended pretty right off the bat, but then they always come back. They always come back around and say, especially if you just have the attitude. I really have the attitude of, okay, he's not my guy. Move on. Number 2, number 12, whatever. Keep going.
Well, I think that's a great attitude to have, because the big issue most people think is this X is the only person I can be with. And your approach is kind of like, no, there's these 15 other guys here, each with their own assets and liabilities. I can just find more. I'll just keep finding more. And I think what the beauty of it really is, think about maybe in your younger days when dating websites didn't exist. It wasn't possible to do something like that because it's really hard to find that, especially if you're like in a small town or something, right? Everyone knows everyone, you're kind of stuck. But nowadays it's not so hard to be able to have that mentality and find the right match.
And I think sometimes we get stuck on thinking, well, this is my soulmate. But think about it. I tell my high school students, how rare is it that your soulmate lives within a 50-mile radius or goes to your same school? That's so odd. Why can't your soulmate be in Africa?
I remember high school. I remember my first girlfriend thinking I was going to marry her, had it all planned out. And then, it's unrealistic, but that's experience talking. And sometimes you have to experience the experience to actually have the experience,
Yeah, I think I tell a story of a shipwrecked sailor. I think shipwrecked sailors have a lot of wisdom to share. You got a guy and he's shipwrecked and he's been there for years, and a beautiful yacht comes pulling up to the island, and he runs out and says, don't come near here. There's big boulders underneath the water. They're going to rip your boat apart. Go around to the other side and pull in over there. And the captain yells at him and says, why would I listen to you? You've been shipwrecked.
It's like the sirens from the Odyssey.
Right. Sometimes shipwrecked people have a lot of wisdom to share.
Yeah, they do.
We can say, hey, here's the pitfalls you don't want to fall into. So I've been around enough and been through, again, like I said, they can read my book on all the relationship issues I've had, to be able to say, hey, you will get over this. A new day will dawn. There will be a new face that will brighten your life. But you need to open yourself up to that. You cannot be so closed off to a relationship with somebody else. And this man or this woman, whoever it was that broke your heart, they need to come off of that pedestal. They do not need to take up any more space in your head. they don't pay. My thought was, I do real estate. And I thought, he's not paying rent. He doesn't get to live in my head.
Yeah, that's a
So
great
I
analogy.
went about it. Yeah, I went about it with everything that I had to get him out of my head. And if that meant replacing him with a bunch of other guys until I found my guy, then that's what I did. But he did not have the right to live there and occupy that space when he wasn't treating me well.
I love it. Now, you had mentioned that you've written a few books. Why don't you tell us
I
about
have.
some of those books?
Okay, the first one is called Victory Ladder, How to Move Your Mountains, a faith-based book on how to have faith, extreme kind of faith. So that's another thing that helped me too. I just really believe that, the glass is always, it's not just half full, it's full. I'm just an extreme optimist. So my second book, though, probably more applicable, is called Stolen Halos, and it's for women who have been hurt, especially in a relationship. So I have been through physical abuse. My ex-husband cheated on me with multiple women. Lots of really, really horrific situations that I won't go into. People can read the book, but it's called Stolen Halos. And so it's how for women to get their halo back, to be able to get back to that place, that beautiful woman that God created them to be fragile and vulnerable and feminine and soft, yet be bold and courageous and fierce and confident at the same time. And my third book, which is in process, is called Power Play. And I teach leadership on the college level. So that's for women that want to have a little bit more power, a little bit more influence in fields that are predominantly dominated by men.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, I really love the name Stolen Halos. It's such a cool take on it. Just because there's like, it's kind of like you have this pure halo, like, and then you get into the relationship and the men just screw the halo up. And so it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for coming on. And so like, it was mind blowing how confident and awesome you were. And I'm so happy that you actually listened to the advice. I can't tell you how many people don't listen to it.
No, my big thing is anybody that is listening, get Chris's program, buy it. It's worth every dime. I did a coaching session with Anna. So worth it. So 100% worth it. It just confirms really what I already needed to know. But for women that don't have this confidence level that I have, you've got to get the program. You've just got to work the program. But again, you've got to listen when Chris says, you have to move on. You have to work on yourself, love yourself, be ungettable, and truly move on. That's when they come back. And then you have the option. Yep. Whether you want to take them back or whether you don't. You hold them. You hold all the power at that point.
Amen. Finally, someone gets it.
Yes.